Hello students, I am Dr. Nimising. Today I bring you the first learning episode in BSc Forensic Science on behalf of the content writers, myself and Ms. Tulika Banerjee on an important unit of paper, Criminalistics, that is Physical Evidence Part 1. In this episode, we will discuss about all the physical evidences and its classification. Here, we will also learn about the need and role of physical evidences at a scene of crime. Module number 1 will cover the introduction and definition. Module number 2, the classification of physical evidence. Module number 3, need of physical evidences. Module number 4, role of physical evidences at the scene of crime. And the last would be the conclusion. Coming to the introduction definition first. Let us first define physical evidence. Physical evidence is any material or entity that has an important role in the matter or the criminal case that finally resulted in the legal proceedings, intended to prove a fact in issue which is based on its demonstrable physical characteristics. Forensic sciences, being an important factor of the criminal justice system, plays a vital role in providing scientific information through the analysis of physical evidences to the investigator. The evidences which are present at the crime scene are what we call as physical evidences, analysis of which helps in linking the criminal, victim and crime scene with each other. It is mainly concerned with the identification of traces of evidence which are left at the scene, their scientific analysis in the lab and finally the reconstruction of the events. During an investigation, forensic evidences are recognized, collected from a crime scene and analyzed scientifically in the laboratory according to the requirements of the investigative officer. After that, the report is submitted to the court of law. As each crime scene is unique and each case presents its own challenges, complex cases may require the collection, examination of a large number of varied evidences. These kinds of considerations need to be kept in mind while evaluating the value of associative physical evidences for comparison. In this module, specific kind of physical evidences have been introduced and the types of information they reveal have been discussed in quite details. Different methods and approaches have been applied to identify these evidences. The physical evidences can be obtained on the culprit, victim, crime scene, weapon, vehicle, etc. The culprit and the victim may carry traces on his clothes, on his shoes, in his hair, underneath his nails, in his sexual body parts in case of sexual offences, etc. The victim may also carry powder residues in case of shooting. In case of killing by poison, the needle marks or poison traces at the administration point may also be found. Most of the trace evidences which are encountered at the crime scene includes saliva or cigarette stub on cups, glasses, dust, body fluids, fibers, etc. Trace evidences such as glass, paint, soil, blood, skin, flesh, etc. may be found sticking to any object or person like in a vehicle collision and an accident. Locating trace evidence is usually a tedious task due to the very minute quantity of evidence encountered. Due to minute nature of evidence, the collection of trace evidence needs more precautions as compared to other types of evidence. Besides trained eye and brain, help of magnifying glass, strong light and UV lamp can also be taken. Coming to physical evidence, this is evidence that does not forget. It is not confused by the excitement of the moment. It is not absent because human witnesses are. It is factual evidence. Physical evidence cannot be wrong. It cannot be perjure itself. Only its interpretation can err, as said by Paul Kirk in 1974. Coming to the classification of physical evidences, broadly speaking, evidence can be divided into three, that is testimonial evidence, physical evidence and trace evidence. Let us now understand these evidences in details. Testimonial evidence. These are the evidence which are given in oral or written statements and often given by people who witnessed an event or a crime. This evidence is often given to police as well as court testimony. Physical evidence. These are the evidences which are any material items that would be present physically at the crime scene, on the victims or found in a suspect's possession. The trace evidence. These are the physical evidences which are found in small but still measurable amounts. Different types of trace evidences are encountered at the crime scene. Few of them are hair, glass, fiber, soil, paint, GSR, tool marks, etc. As such, there is no classification for physical evidences, but trace evidences can be classified under physical evidences only. But certain classification has been proposed for physical evidences by the scientists, which are comparatively more realistic than others. General nature of the evidence, the type of material, the physical state of the evidence, the type of crime, the type of questions to be resolved according to the way the evidence was produced and according to the appropriate laboratory approach. Every scheme is useful in offering a different conceptual perspective related to physical evidence, but some of them are more useful than others. Let us discuss here now one by one. Coming to the general nature of the evidence. According to the general nature of items, the physical evidence can be classified as physical, chemical or biological. The biological can be related to human, animal or vegetable. In this scheme, the examples of physical would be paint, plastic, glass, firearm, cartridge, case, tool, tool marks, whereas a drug sample would be chemical. Examples of biological would include hair, pollen grains and blood stains, DNA, etc. Then comes the type of material. This classification system of evidence is based on the type of material of which it is composed of, such as paint evidence, blood evidence, wood evidence, metallic evidence, glass evidence, plastic evidence and paper evidence, etc. The physical state of the evidence now. Evidences like other matter can be categorized on the basis of its physical state like solid, liquid or gas. Example of solid state category includes most type of evidence encountered, cartridge case, firearms, glass, tools, clothing and paper, etc. Fewer items of evidence would be placed in the liquid or gas categories. Important examples of liquid evidences include liquid blood samples, either evidence samples or known controls, alcohol and accelerants collected in connection with the investigation of suspected arson case. Gas samples may occur as evidence more often than one might think, but they are rarely recognized as such and even more rarely corrected. Specific type of devices can be used to collect sample of gases and vapors at crime and fire scenes. Coming to the type of crime, another system to classify the physical evidence is based on the type of crime from which it has been collected. Thus, for example, the evidences may be related to assaults, rape, homicide, burglary cases and so on. This scheme might have value in certain situations, but it should be appreciated that any particular type of physical evidence can be found in connection with the investigation of virtually any kind of crime. Now, let us discuss the types of questions to be resolved. In this classification system, evidences are classified according to whether it will be useful in the reconstruction of the event by proving an element of the crime, in linking a suspect to a victim or to a crime scene, in excluding or exonerating a suspect, or in corroborating or disproving an alibi. These are very useful during the collection of evidence at the scene of crime. According to the way the evidence was produced, coming to this now, in this system of classification, the evidences are classified according to how it relates to the act under investigation. An important thought here is the way the individuals involved in the crime have interacted with the environment and with each other, and the type of evidences produced during these interactions. According to the appropriate laboratory approach, all the sample which are referred to the laboratory must be accompanied by the list of query related to the examination in the lab. In this scheme, the evidence can be categorized on the basis of the type of the following examination required: identification, individualization and reconstruction. The evidence is examined which is relevant to the investigation. Now, coming to the need of physical evidences. The importance of the physical evidence in the field of criminal investigations came into picture in the early 20th century. Since then, these have been used to reconstruct the crime scene so that a clear description of the people, places and the things involved in the crime becomes available. Such evidence include fingerprints, fibers, paints, glass, gunshot residue, etc. to follow the criminals, but these evidences have to be collected with special care so that they are not destroyed and proper analysis can be done. The carelessness while collecting the evidence may lead to contamination and incorrect results. It is actually a physical contact between the criminal and the victim that results in the transfer of trace materials. Their identification and comparison associates the suspect to the crime scene under investigation. The main aim of conducting criminal investigations scientifically means to recognize the evidences at the scene of crime, which can be analyzed scientifically in the forensic science laboratory and help answering the questions which are posed by the investigating officer, and also helps to identify the suspected person who has actually committed the crime. To achieve this aim, the investigation needs to be conducted at the following two places: the crime scene and the laboratory. Both the places are very important, but the crime scene investigation is more important than the laboratory investigation, in the sense, if at first instance the evidences are properly recognized, collected and packaged properly, then only the laboratory results will be useful in the identification of the suspect. Coming to the role of physical evidences at the scene of crime. Physical evidence plays an important role in the investigation of a crime. It all depends how many evidences are recovered and how much potential it has. The evidence left behind plays a crucial role in reconstruction of events. The physical evidence in itself cannot describe everything about what exactly happened. Nevertheless, this evidence has still the ability to support or contradict statements which are given by the eyewitnesses and or suspects. The information obtained from physical evidences recovered can also lead to the information and also confirms the reconstruction of a crime to a jury. Trace evidence refers to small samples of a substance, in particular fingerprints, fibers, hair, glass fragments, soil, gunshot residue, paint, chips, etc. Dr. Edmund Lockhart, the founder of the Institute of Criminalistics at the University of Lyon, France, showed their importance for the first time. He gave the famous principle which is known as Lockhart's exchange principle, which states that every contact leaves a trace, which means when two objects come into contact with each other, a cross transfer of material occurs. He strongly believed that every criminal can be connected to a crime by dust particles which are carried from the crime scene. Most of the crime scenes do contain physical evidence left behind by the criminal unconsciously. These evidences serve many roles during an investigation, like identifying the remains at the crime scene or reconstruct a crime. The presence of trace evidence is mainly dependent on the type of material to be considered as trace evidence, since some particles and substances remain on the surface for a longer time. This depends on the size, shape and the amount of the particles deposited. Smaller particles persist for a longer time in comparison to the larger particles. In addition, irregular surfaces such as wood collect smaller particles more readily than the smooth surfaces. Some important examples of the physical evidences include hair, human and animal hair both. The examination of the hair determines whether the hair is of human or animal. In case it is a human hair, one can determine the various characteristics like body area, length, root type or any artificial treatment done on the hair. If the hair is of any animal species, then the species and breed of the animal can be determined. Then comes the fibers. The fiber examination can determine whether the fiber is a natural fiber or a man-made fiber. Its source can be determined by comparing it with fibers from a known source. Natural fibers are mainly from a plant or an animal source like cotton, silk, etc. These can be detected easily by microscopy, but most of the fibers which are used in the garments nowadays are synthetic. So, standard samples are taken for comparison with suspect samples. Coming to fabric now, fabric examinations determine whether the suspected fabric and a known piece of fabric are same in construction, color and composition. Now coming to glass. Since different types of glasses are produced in different ways, it is possible to determine the source from which the broken piece of glass used as the evidence originated. One can easily come to the conclusion whether the glass under consideration is a window glass, a car windshield, or a vehicle's rear and side window glass. Now comes the paint. The analysis of the paint can be mechanical, physical, and chemical in nature. The analysis includes matching of flakes of paint, the exact composition of the paint, the texture, the appearance, the thickness, and the pattern of the occurrence. Now comes the fingerprints. Fingerprints are actually the best evidence as they can identify the person exactly present at the crime scene. Now, blood samples. The shape of the blood samples can actually tell as from what height they have fallen down. DNA can be extracted from blood samples obtained from the crime scene to simplify the identification process. Information physical evidences can reveal. Now, let us come to this point. Physical evidence may either be left behind by the perpetrator or sometime picked up from the crime scene or victim. The evidences after their collection need to be analyzed, which is concerned with identification of traces of evidence, individualization and reconstruction of events. In every forensic science investigation, the aim of the evidence analysis is to provide useful information that can help to make the facts of the case clear to the jury. Physical evidence analysis in general and their interpretation in particular can provide a number of the following different types of information related to the crime. Information regarding the corpus delicti. The corpus delicti means the body of the crime and refers to provide necessary information on the facts of the case to verify that a crime has taken place. It has often been interpreted that additional evidences are required beyond a confession to convict an individual for a crime. In other words, corroborating evidence must be introduced before a confession may be admitted for trial. Presence of tool or track marks, blood stain, fingerprints, broken doors or windows, ransacked rooms and furniture and missing valuables are all examples of corroborating physical evidences that would help in establishing a case of burglary. Similarly, in an assault case, the blood, a weapon or torn clothing could be important physical evidence to prove in the court of law. Information regarding the modus operandi. Modus operandi is nothing but a Latin term which means method of operation, and it refers to the manner in which a crime has been committed. A criminal's modus operandi is based on the choices and his behaviors that are intended to assist the criminals in the commission of a crime. Most of the criminals or criminal gangs have a particular MO which is characteristic style, choices of using different weapons to commit a crime. Physical evidence can help in revealing these MOs. In arson cases, the type and the container used to carry accelerant and the way in which fibers are set constitute MO. The physical evidence that helps to establish this pattern is called the MO or signature of an arsonist. Similarly, in cases which are related to the dacoity or burglary or terrorist strike has specific MO or signature of the criminal. Different cases treated separately can sometimes be connected by careful documentation of similar MO. Hence, MO or signature of the criminal must be given sufficient weightage. Now, linking a suspect with a victim and a weapon. Linking a suspect with a victim and a weapon of offence is one of the most common and important parameter, particularly in violent crimes. This can be established by collecting and comparing the physical evidences from crime scene. Blood or blood stain, hair, blood present on the glass piece, clothing fibers, cosmetics and other such evidences may be transferred from a victim to a perpetrator. Items found in a suspect's possession can be linked to a victim, such as by comparison of cartridge cases or bullets or by analysis of blood found on a knife. It is also possible to trace the evidence which may have been transferred from a perpetrator to a victim. It becomes important that suspects and their clothing along with other belongings be thoroughly searched for trace evidences. The other belongings of victims should also be treated similar way. Placing a perpetrator at a crime scene. Another linkage, which is also a common and significant one, is to establish by the analysis of physical evidences the presence of perpetrator at the crime scene. Fingerprints and shoe prints, blood, body fluids like saliva and semen, hair, fiber, soil, bullets, cartridge cases, tool marks, footprints or shoe prints, tire tracks and objects that belong to the criminal are some examples of deposited evidence. Depending on the type of crime, various kinds of evidence from the scene may be carried away. Stolen property is the most obvious example, but two-way transfers according to Lecourt's principle of exchange of trace evidence can be used to link a suspect, a victim or even a witness to a crime scene. Supporting or disproving a witness testimony. Physical evidences are a very powerful and reliable source of information related to the criminal activity at the crime scene. Analysis of different types of evidences can often indicate conclusively whether a person's version related to the set of events are believable or not. The best example is of a driver whose vehicle matched with a description of a hit and run vehicle. An examination of the vehicle might reveal the presence of blood on the bottom of the bumper. Now the driver explains the findings by claiming that his vehicle has hit a dog on the way. Tests on the blood for species identification can reveal whether the blood belongs to a dog or a human. Identification of suspect from fingerprint or other individualizing techniques. The suspect or the perpetrator can best be identified with the help of fingerprint evidence. A fingerprint found at a scene and later identified as belonging to a particular person results in an unequivocal identification of that person. The term identification as used here really means individualization. Although people commonly say identification of a suspect or identification of a fingerprint, this is not strictly correct. The distinction between the terms identification is based on class characteristics, that is, the identification of a particular group of items, and individualization is based on individual characteristics, that is, identification of a particular item in a group. Now, providing an investigative lead. Physical evidence analysis can play an important role in directing an investigation along a productive path. In a hit and run case, for example, a chip of paint from the vehicle can be used to narrow down the number and kinds of different cars that may have been involved. A substantial part of the forensic analysis consists of making comparisons between questioned and known samples. Depending upon the degree of individuality exhibited by the samples, the following conclusions can be drawn about the association between the people and the physical evidence in different cases. When questioned and known samples are compared, the following three possible conclusions can be drawn. They match in all the properties used to compare them. In this case, a common origin becomes possible, or with a few kinds of evidence where jigsaw physical fits or fingerprints can be proven. They do not match. In this case, the possibility of common origin is excluded. Exclusions are unequivocal and provide unimpeachable evidence of non-association. Exclusionary findings can be most helpful in the conduct of investigations. Now, in some cases, there is insufficient sample to make a conclusive comparison. In such an instance, class characteristics of the samples would be noted, but a conclusion could not be reached about the possibility of a common origin. Comparisons which demonstrate exclusions on the basis of physical analysis indicate that a prime suspect is innocent, that the investigation is not proceeding along a productive path, or initial theories about crime, what actually happened, are wrong. In other cases where comparison yields a match, the conclusions depend on the evidence involved. Fingerprints are uniquely individualizing if sufficiently details. Bullets and cartridge cases can mostly be unequivocally related to a particular weapon, provided if weapon is available for comparison. Physical matches can provide proof of common origin with many types of evidence. Tracks and imprints can often be attributed to the object that made them. Therefore, forensic science can be used as an effective and powerful tool in the investigation of crime and prosecution of criminal if physical evidences are properly appreciated and utilized. Now, coming to the conclusion of the module, forensic sciences being an important factor of the criminal justice system plays a vital role in providing scientific information through the analysis of physical evidences to the investigator. The physical evidences present at the scene of crime are of utmost importance as they help in linking of the suspect, victim and the scene of crime. They can also help in the reconstruction of sequence of events. But the most important point to be noted here is that they should be collected properly, because their possible contamination may provide negative results. With all these information here, we come to the end of today's lecture. Do keep in mind what we discussed today. I will be back with one more lecture in this series. If you want to learn more and enhance your knowledge, you may log on to our website www.cec.nic.in for MCQs, quizzes, LORs, etc. Thank you for your time today. I will see you in the next lecture. Have a great day.